Ben Roberts, the newly appointed non-regional independent director at AfriNIC.
So I came here for 6 months to fix up the fibre networks, and I'm still here. It all started somewhere, right? So in the beginning, the design of the infrastructure in Kenya is largely the design of the colonial settlers that were here. And the internet has followed the same pathways, right? So the internet follows the same roads, the same railways. The railway was built in 1906. I think we need to see more, more people involved in understanding what this is about, right? Because it doesn't just affect ISPs and students in universities.
So it affects everybody globally.
Yeah. If the internet system is to be successful, everybody has to be playing their part, right?
Welcome back to Tech Talk Africa. In our first episode, we asked who controls Africa's internet and why does it matter? That question became even more pressing with the AfriNIC 2025 board elections, whose results were announced on the 12th of September this year. These elections marked a turning point in who sits at the table deciding Africa's internet governance. Today, I'm joined by someone who is not just part of that new leadership, but has also been a significant force in Africa's digital infrastructure. Ben Roberts, the newly appointed non-regional independent director at AfriNIC. Ben, you'll have to repeat that title for me, please. Ben is originally from England, based in Kenya. He's been here for many years. Ben's also played a central role in building one of Africa's most extensive fibre networks. He's former group CTO at Liquid Intelligent Technologies. Ben, welcome to Tech Talk Africa.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great. Right. You've been in Kenya for a few years now. And I've been wanting to ask you this question in all the corridors I've seen you. What brought you to Kenya? What brought you home?
I came here to build internet infrastructure. So I was working at Liquid Telecom, and we had been building fiber cables through Southern Africa. And I'd been based in the UK, but we started out doing satellite communications from the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. So connecting Africa by satellite. But that was not like Starlink now. It was like we're using big dishes to connect whole countries. Mm. And then we started building fiber. And then an opportunity came up, and we acquired about 5 or 6 companies in East Africa, which had fiber. One of them was Kenya Data Networks. So I came here for 6 months to fix up the fiber networks, and I'm still here. So it's been an interesting time, yeah.
So from 6 months to how many years now?
12? It was 13, 14, yeah.
13 to 14 years, wow. Yes, I guess that's the African poor, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on joining the AfriNIC board.
Thank you.
I think I butchered your title at the start of this. Do you mind just letting us know what you'll be doing, what the title is, and that journey?
Sure, yeah. So you got it right, I think. But there was an election held, voted by the members of AfriNIC. And the members of AfriNIC are everybody who has resources from AfriNIC. I'll perhaps explain what those resources are. Yeah. So AfriNIC is an internet governance organization for Africa that looks after all the addressing resources, and that's the IP addresses and these other things called autonomous system numbers. But basically those are the numbers that connect up the internet. And AfriNIC is one of 5 continental internet registries. So it's the one for Africa. And it was the last of those 5 to be established. Actually then the last to be allocated resources, and then probably has the least, or started with the least resources being last to be allocated the resources. Anyway, it's been for the last couple of years operating or sort of limping along without certain things in place. It hasn't had a board of directors, and hasn't had a CEO either. So eventually, after a lot of back and forth, there was an election to reappoint the board of directors, and then there's 6 representatives from different regions. So East Africa, Indian Ocean, North Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa, and might have forgotten one there, but anyway, there's 6 of those, and Fiona Osongo, who you interviewed last time, she has also been elected as the representative for East Africa, and then there were 2 seats that are reserved for non-regional representatives. So, and I was also elected to represent one of those, non-regional. Although I'm based in Kenya, I've done a lot of work Pan-African. So I think that was kind of why I went for the non-regional seat, and still continue to be working in other countries.
Well, congratulations. But this election, from what I've read on LinkedIn in my research, there was a first attempt that was botched, cancelled, and then this was the second attempt at the election, and then now you've been elected, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Why was that? Why? I mean, yeah, I've said botched, but was there a reason as to why it would seem like outside actors just did not want this board to be formed?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people didn't quite want things to flow, I suppose. And one aspect of AfriNIC's situation, I said it had no board for a while.
Yeah.
It has been involved in a number of court cases from multiple different parties, and it's quite complicated. But various members, directors, companies involved in some of those court actions, and that's eventually left it being put into receivership. So then Mauritius, it's headquartered in Mauritius, and Mauritius appointed an official receiver to look after it. And there was one, and that person was supposed to appoint a board of directors. It didn't really happen. And then another receiver was appointed. And they tried to do an election, and irregularities, it seemed, with some of the processes that were some processes were documented around how to vote online or how to vote with proxy votes. But on the day of the election, suddenly a new process popped up, and it wasn't, it wasn't right. Also, people complained that people were turning up to cast their votes with powers of attorney that they hadn't signed. So I think at least one member who was from Mauritius, turned up in person to vote, the CTO or CEO or something, to find that a vote had already been cast
on their behalf,
using a power of attorney that company, are saying was not signed by them. There's only one documented instance of that, but I think that's what led to the cancellation and calling quits on the first election. Yeah.
So you guys have worked really hard to get here.
Somehow, yeah.
It sounds like it. So whilst your role is independent, what does an independent board member mean? Sorry. Because you have to represent the interests of the continent, but you're independent. So how do you merge those two?
Yeah. So the organization is operates in 2 ways, really, right? So as I said, I had these members. The members are the people who have resources from AfriNIC, and then there's also an aspect of a community, and the community is basically anybody in Africa who wants to shape internet governance around African internet, basically. So AfriNIC operates 2 policies, and then the way it hands out these resources, it works 2 policies. The policies are debated and created by the community, right? Anybody who wants to get involved in policy development, and AfriNIC, the organization, then to those policies allocates those resources accordingly. The board are there to govern the company, right? So AfriNIC is a company, and the board of directors is there to make sure that is running, and that is really representing the members, right? So the members are the ones who vote in the board. There's some other committees and other things where different members are elected to different committees, and some where there's directors and members or community members also there. So it's like a multi-stakeholder model is what we call. So it's like it's not to say everybody runs the internet, but it's to make sure that the internet is run in an inclusive way, not really by governments in the same way, but the governments are a stakeholder in how the internet is run. Yeah. But globally, the internet is not. It's not run by governments, right? I mean, there are many players in the internet, and I talked of, I said autonomous system numbers. Yeah. That's a number really that if you have that, it means you're really a player in the internet, right? I mean, if you have that number, it's only about 6 or 7 digits long. But if you have one of those numbers and you're allocated these other IP addresses, it means you get to own a piece of the internet. You get to operate a piece of that. Many people, operate bits of the internet. They all connect up. What makes it an internet is having hundreds of thousands of these organizations working together to build a global network, if that makes sense.
Sort of, kind of. But the part I want to hone in on is around government. What do you believe, or would you support government stepping in and saying they'll own the internet? If it was to go south, if this election was to go south, which it hasn't, and how do you feel about governments running and owning the internet?
Well, it all started somewhere, right? So in the beginning of telecommunications, governments often owned and controlled telecommunications in a country completely, right? So even United Kingdom was, British Telecom. Yep. Was there.
Still are, I think.
It was privatized at one point. I bought shares in the IPO.
You did?
Yeah.
Were you really rich?
Yeah, and not really. I sold them too young. But even here, Kenya, in the beginning there was Telecom Kenya, right? Yeah. So it was there, and then Safaricom was created really as a spin out from Telecom Kenya, and Safaricom was also privatized, and many Kenyans took part in that IPO, and Safaricom is owned by Kenyans, right? Or the government have a stakeholding. Yeah. The Kenyan people and Vodafone Group or Vodacom Group also have. But we've seen a process of deregulation where rather than starting with one telco, one government, this has happened all over the world, where more players have come in, more telecommunications companies. Here we have 3 or 4 mobile telecommunications companies. Then we have many more. There's another type of license we have here called Tier 2 licenses, and this is people who operate bits of the internet, towers, fiber, data centers, covering the whole country or parts of the country. And then there are other licenses, Tier 3, and there's another license coming for community networks. People who start connecting down at neighborhood level to fiber to the home or wireless, So in Kenya, we have about 200 actors in the internet. So there's 200 people with autonomous system numbers who are part of that Kenyan internet. And it's unlikely we'll see the internet go back to a telecom days. I would say it's highly unlikely that we'll ever go back to, everything is controlled by one company because we've diversified now. And there are big players and there are small players, and government have entities in there as well. Yeah. But some countries in Africa, there's only one government-owned telco. There's a few that are still like that. They have not deregulated and not opened up the markets. But generally, having private sector players, competition in the markets, and as I say, government entities also playing in the market, playing in the field, you end up with a working, commercial model and public sector model for the internet, right?
Oh, so it starts with government, then, to use your words, because of deregulation and the need for competition, the government takes a step back slowly.
I'd say so, yeah.
Not as take a step back. They're still invested, but they're not the majority shareholder.
Yeah, I mean, back to BT, I think UK government's completely sold out of BT.
Yeah, yes, they did,
at some point.
Yeah.
But, we're hearing, I know this government is looking to privatise some companies. They've talked about privatising some state-owned corporations. So maybe they'll sell some shares in Safaricom. We don't know, but it's getting to the point where governments, if they are invested in telecommunications or internet companies, they're probably seeing that as a financial investment rather than a investment to control the flow of information. This is kind of where we're heading. Like we're seeing more and more freedom of information. We're seeing data protection laws. Making the information of the data of the citizen, owned by the citizen, and then the Constitution itself is protecting the freedom of information. So, not everything works perfectly, but that's where we're heading. That's the way Kenya's been heading, and Kenya is heading into this more information society than it was 40 years ago.
What I've heard, it's less conspiracy and more about finances, really, raising money.
Yeah.
But then there's still laws to protect that deregulation and privatization.
Yes. So deregulation doesn't mean no regulation. You have regulations to make the market work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, AfriNIC manages internet numbers, like you mentioned, resources, but much of the ecosystem, i.e. undersea cables, cloud platforms, routers, they're influenced by global players. How then can the continent's assets assert itself as stronger in terms of sovereignty?
Yeah, well,
it's a cheeky one.
It's about who makes the investment at the end of the day, right? So Kenya has invested very heavily in infrastructure, in systems, in data centers, and look at a platform like M-Pesa. This is an investment that's been made by Safaricom, in Kenya. So that is very much a payment system for Kenya. Right? Although we have the M-Pesa brand has been in other countries as well. M-Pesa is not a global payment system; it's a Kenyan payment system. So we do have sovereignty of payment systems, and it was also. Some years ago, M-Pesa used to be, when I first came to Kenya, M-Pesa used to be hosted in Germany. So it used to have servers based in Germany. And then I remember it was, M-Pesa came home and that servers were put in Safaricom data centers in Kenya. Now, although at the time, I had nothing to gain from this. I was working for a competitor of Safaricom, really, But I thought this was good, right? Because the fact is, your payment system, that is your national payment system, is being hosted in Kenya, and we are still at a stage where some platforms that people rely upon are not hosted in Kenya. So. An example of a platform would be this one. We send our messages to each other in our groups a lot. We come to rely upon it. Yes, if it goes down, and it has sometimes gone down, we might pick up the phone and call the old-fashioned way or send a text or something. But I don't know how many text messages you would send to your friends and family on a daily basis. Probably you send a few more messages on other applications. I'm having a guess. I would be the same. I would kind of rarely send a text unless I'm replying to somebody who sent me an SMS,
In my house, or to interject, in my house, I rarely look at my text messages, and it's always a bone of contention. I text you. I don't use text messages. Whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I'm being forced to go back to check my text. But yes.
Yeah. So that one, the green telephone app, is probably top of my. There were other apps, but that is probably top of my attention as well. If you want to get me, I'm not telling. I mean, I'm normally quite accessible, but telling everybody here, if you want to find me, that's the one you find me on. And the groups are many, but so you have a situation where we rely upon certain things that are not there, and you hear it across Africa as well. Sometimes we're talking with policy makers and government, and you say, yes, I've got this proposal about a digital sovereignty proposal, And the minister will say, oh, yeah, well, that's good. Just email it to me at minister@gmail.com.
But Gmail is not sovereign.
Yes, you see. So that is where we're at. We do have, in Kenya, we have great infrastructure. We have data centers and we have, fiber. In most parts of the country, we have 4G coverage. But then there are other pieces of infrastructure coming. I see you might have one on your roof here, which is not operated it's a global system of satellite networks, which is not necessarily, a sovereign communication system. So we have to be really careful about, making sure that we build infrastructure that is going to be owned and operated and resilient to global shifts in whatever's happening in the globe. Kenya has to have that stuff working, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have a road a road that's in Kenya to get from one city to another. It needs to be based in Kenyan soil.
Okay, I like that answer. I was supposed to say assert itself. So M-Pesa have asserted themselves. And do we have other M-Pesa-like success stories? Because everybody's always going to look to the M-Pesa story, but you have the green telephone app. What if we were to come up with our own similar app, like the green one? What would that look like?
It's extremely easy to create one of those apps, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are actually hundreds of messaging apps that do similar things.
Yeah.
And creating the code to create one of those things is something that any kid can do, right? Even when that app was bought for some billions of dollars, I heard that it was only like a few hundred, lines of code. So it's not about creating the tech. It is about growing people onto a system. It is about critical mass, getting enough people on there. I remember, I'll have to go back to M-Pesa, but we do talk about M-Pesa a lot. But I saw an interview with Richard Quest was interviewing Michael Joseph, and Michael was telling the M-Pesa story to Richard Quest on CNN, and he was saying about how in the first year he as they launched M-Pesa, he pushed his whole team to get to 1 million users. So they had to go out there and by hook or by crook get M-Pesa to 1 million users so that it became viral. That's the exact words Michael used to describe it. And that's what I'm getting at, right? It's getting a mass on there. Once he knew it get to 1 million, then it became this thing. It grew by itself. So you have to invest to get people to change behavior. They probably did a lot of billboards. I wasn't here at the time, but I asked some people who are still there now, and they, who were there at the time, and they remembered, he was like beating, get this thing done. But they invested heavily to get people to start making payments this way. Now, you would have to do a lot, and I know there's a friend of mine, and he was in the entertainment space, and now he's a member of parliament. But I remember he launched a video app. Like YouTube, because it doesn't pick up by itself, right? You have to, if you're creating a video content app, anybody can create a YouTube platform, write the code for it, but you've got to get content creators, you've got to get people watching and creating at the same time, and it's very hard, right?
So what I'm hearing from you, it's not the tech. The tech is not the problem. It's there's need for investment, there's need for people.
Yeah.
So when I'm flying the flag and saying the continent risks falling into digital dependency, am I right to say that? Is my argument flawed? Where do you stand?
Yes, you are.
How am I flawed? Why am I flawed?
You're not flawed. No, you're right. I'm saying you're not flawed.
Yes. But, am I right to say that? Yes.
It's a good point, right? Especially, not every part of the continent is in the same place as us. And as I say, we have 97% of population of Kenya has a 4G signal. Now, it doesn't mean that it's particularly always strong. You might have to go outside and stand on your roof to download a video or something. But, and you might not have a smartphone in, somebody in parts of Kenya. Many people are not having
smartphones. Like the Loitoktok region. Actually, there's no smartphones and there's no connectivity. I was not impressed.
Yeah. So there are gaps, especially Mount Kenya region, like the whole of Mount Kenya National Park is missing coverage gaps.
Yeah.
However, now we have these satellite systems that you can put anywhere, and we're talking of satellite connections to phones, that would directly connect to your phones. Now, as I say, Kenya, the gaps are less, but there are other countries in Africa where the gaps are far more.
Mm-hmm.
And still a lot of investment needs to happen to make sure everybody is covered, connectivity. So, the bigger the gaps
Mm-hmm.
Of connectivity, the bigger the risk of pure dependency on something else to cover the coverage. I wrote an article for CIO, but it was about this satellite to phone stuff, and much as it's certainly, once we have satellites talking to a phone, it's going to be great for a Mount Kenya wildlife service ranger who is now not only going to be able to use his walkie-talkie, but he's going to be able to use his mobile phone, send a message. He can call, help out stranded hikers. But it's not something you want to be. You don't want to give up building infrastructure. You say, let's finish what we started here. It needs to be done. And then, one initiative I'm very I've got involved in since leaving Liquid is working with UNICEF and a project called Giga, which is around connecting all the schools in the world to internet, making sure that every school has internet connectivity.
Wow, that's brilliant.
So many schools in Africa are not, most schools in Africa are not connected to internet. They might have, again, a 4G signal, but they're not, they haven't got a proper broadband connection, et cetera, et cetera. So trying to address some of these difficult problems. Yeah.
You've brought up schools, and I was saying to myself, I said, I talk about AI a lot, but there's a school somewhere that's not being connected.
Correct.
So there's a huge gap there. You're obviously trying to close that gap. But what do you think we need to do to avoid total digital dependency? 100%.
Yeah, look, the connectivity would be the bigger priority, because there's 3 billion people in the world who are basically don't have connectivity now. Much as we talk of AI and we're moving into the age of AI, there's another conversation around being dependent on somebody else's AI models, and we should take that very seriously. But also, if you don't have connectivity, you're not going to be using anyone's AI models.
So you need to strike a balance. So if I came to you right now, offered you $1 million to say, do not build Kenya a sovereign AI model, what would you do?
Well, that wouldn't be enough.
That would be okay.
but no, it's not possible. We can't we can't just say we can't have a strategy of just consuming somebody else's tech.
No,
right?
we can't.
You're having Kenya's got resources. It's got good resources and lots of sun and lovely weather, but
fresh food,
good food, energy. But one of the main resources it has is young people, smart young people, who are coming into the workplace and they demanding certain things now, right? And they're having more access to information than because of where we're at. But that is, it's a threat and a resource. But we really have to make sure that jobs are created. We have to make sure that the things are there. We can't be having AI replace even the small jobs we have.
No.
It's just not going to work. Yeah.
So you still haven't answered my question. If I gave you $1 million to not build a sovereign AI model,
What would I
You
do
said
with
it's
it?
not enough. 2 million, 3 million. As an AfriNIC board member, looking at Africa's interests, because I want to be a conspiracist and say, with a huge drive for sovereign technology, sovereign AI, there can be that cheeky individual. You've seen it with AfriNIC board. It's I'll pay you off so that you don't advance the continent to where it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's is it about the individual's integrity? What is it about?
There were certainly, there were certainly people around that don't, if they're given the opportunity to take something and not do something, then that happens. There's the old joke, and this joke about there's an African president, and then it's a long joke, but now I've started it, I have to finish it.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's an African president. He's been fighting a guerrilla war, and he's just got in to be president, and he gets invited to France to meet the president of France. So he gets taken first of all to a big chateau, and the president of France is there, and he says, "This is wonderful." He says, "You've been president of this country only for a couple of years, and I've also just become president of my country in Africa. How did you get so wealthy to live in a place like this?"
Yeah.
He says, "Well, you saw that university we visited earlier on, and so he says, yeah." He says, "It's 10%." He says. That project we did, I took 10% of that. That's part of how rich he says. And that bridge we crossed earlier, 10%. So taking 10% of everything. That's how I got so rich. So the president goes back to his country, and 10 years later, he invites the former president from France to come see him. Anyway, they land in this little airport. He drives through some mud. Goes past some children kicking a ball around in a field, and he gets to the presidential castle, and it's this amazing thing, the chateau built in the style of his friend, the former president of France. So the guy says to him, you've only been here now 10 years since you got independence. How have you managed to build so much? He says, well, remember that university, that airport that we had, and then the bridge we crossed and the university that we built. He says, no, I didn't see any of those. I just saw, this airstrip, the mud going to the river, and I saw the kids in the park. He says 100%.
Oh my God. Oh my God. But then you've dug a hole for yourself.
You've never heard that joke?
I haven't heard that joke, because that's insinuating that the African president is totally corrupt and the French president is not corrupt. It's just 10% corrupt.
It's all corruption. Yeah.
Oh, it's all corrupt. Oh, okay, it's all corrupt. But why is it the African president is like 100% corrupt?
I won't say they all are, but anyway, it's just a joke.
We're deviating. Right. In 2017, you co-authored what became known as, was it the anti-shutdown policy?
Ah.
Yeah. And if I'm not wrong, the draft proposed that AfriNIC should deny internet resources to any government that deliberately shuts down internet access for political reasons. So you guys went as far as saying governments and their affiliates, that's ministries, regulators, universities, and even central banks, could lose their IP addresses if shutdowns were approved. And then there were concerns raised.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you propose such a policy? What was driving that? Was there an election going on at that time? Or we're talking 7 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So in 8 years, yeah.
So Kenya, by the way, has had some very controversial elections. That even one was nullified by a Supreme Court. Others have been challenged in the Supreme Court. Kenya's never shut down the internet during elections.
We haven't. No.
However,
but we had some dolphins eat some cables.
Yeah.
During one hot, was it protest time? But continue.
Yeah. That one, June 25th.
Yeah, June 2. Yeah, last year the dolphins ate some cables. Yeah.
But during elections,
yeah,
there's never been internet shutdowns. But various countries in Africa have, regularly shut down the internet around the time of elections, before, after And then other purposes as well, even during school examinations, so children
deter cheating or something.
Well, I've heard so, but I mean,
just round about the same time.
We had an education
minister
called Dr. Matiangi, who seemed to, tackle exam cheating, and one of the things that was put in place was to not let children take mobile phones into exams. So you don't need to turn off mobile phone networks to stop exam cheating.
No, he knew what he was doing. Yeah.
So these are extreme measures, but some countries take these extreme measures. Now, the policy that was proposed as an AfriNIC policy, as I said, anybody as a community member can propose a policy to AfriNIC, and it was shot down, right? So the policy, it was actually presented and discussed at a meeting that took place, an AfriNIC meeting took place in Kenya. It was at Boma Hotel in Kenya, and the policy was not adopted, but it got people talking about the internet shutdowns. I think it was important to have those conversations, because if you are investing billions of dollars into infrastructure, as many companies are, and the one I work for was too, or you are like AfriNIC, allocating IP resources, to enable people to invest and build out infrastructure, and then governments are shutting that down. It's obviously having multiple effects, but it's denying people access to information, and it is threatening investments that have been made. So
thank you for saying that. Yeah, threatening investments, because the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is this more about investments or is it denying people information? So it's a balance of both.
Yeah,
looking at your pocket and looking at access to information.
Yeah.
What if that policy was approved? What kind of world would we be living in right now? Would you have created, I don't know, would you have created an issue between your AfriNIC and governments?
Certainly would have led to conflict, and that was, one of the main reasons it was shut down. I mean, AfriNIC is there to represent all of its members, and many of its members are government organizations, right? So that is government-owned telecommunications companies, government-owned ICT services companies here. You have organizations that are government departments or government parastatals who run the services for government, run e-government and other things. So all of those need IP addresses, and they all are members of, they all should be members of AfriNIC, higher education, universities having these resources. So there's a lot of, the majority of the members of AfriNIC would be private sector, but then, a good number are government owned. So, it would have obviously led to, serious conflict, but, AfriNIC is not there to start conflict with its members. It's there to, make sure that everybody is represented and the policies are right. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, I'll use the word, do you feel like CIOs supported, first things first, did we have enough CIOs know about what was happening with AfriNIC? Second, do you have a lot of tech leaders supporting what you evangelize, when free internet for everybody, regardless of who you are? Or do CIOs need to do a bit more? Because from where I'm standing, that's Ben and Fiona's job. We don't have anything to do with it. But on the previous episodes, actually, you have everything to do with it. Have you had the kind of support you would have expected?
Yeah. I'll explain why it's important, because the first people to get, to need or get IP resources from an organization like AfriNIC have been, the networks, that's the telecommunications companies and the internet service providers. In some countries, there might be, as I say, not many telcos or not many ISPs, and most of the people who have resources will be in that category. But also, the people who've been taking part in AfriNIC have nearly entirely been from that community. So the people setting the policies, people who've been voting, have been ISPs, telco. Well, even telco, even mobile telcos have been not so much involved. It's been a lot of internet service providers and academia have been very active, and a community that is there. But as you get to be a big enterprise, and the type of organizations that their CIOs are part of the DX5 CIO community, they also need to have those resources. They might say they don't want to be dependent on one internet service provider. They need to have their own e-commerce systems and platforms. So they need IP addresses. They want to have 3 redundant links. So they need to get those resources from AfriNIC. So many of the members are large enterprises, and particularly Kenya. I said there's about 200, and probably about at least 100 of those is the big companies of Kenya. And we had a session here last time I was here. We were talking about it, and I remember KPLC were here. They said they have IP resources. People like Kenya Airways would have, are not networks. They're not providing connectivity to people, but they're having those things. So the people who've been involved in AfriNIC's goings on, electing directors, setting policies, have not been including those people. So they're not been taking part, right? They've not known so much about it. They're signing up to AfriNIC, they get their IP resources, and then they don't know. They don't know this thing. So the people have been, involved in setting policies. Yeah. It's not really been so inclusive. And I would say it's not particularly gender inclusive either. It is, old techie. No, I mean, you can't have, this is supposed to be, community driven policies, and it's engineers, right? And internet engineers who've been doing it, and it needs to be more inclusive. So the awareness, CIO has been helping raise awareness with that community. We saw then there was a platform showing who the registered voters were from Kenya, so we could see who had registered. We're seeing people who probably had never really known much about AfriNIC before. So just raising awareness, the key message that to bear in mind is, if this organization stops working, mm-hmm. the internet stops working. So it is important. Yeah.
What's the likelihood, but knowing you and Fiona are there, it's not going to happen. But what's the likelihood of something like this happening again in future? I hope it's never going to happen, of course, but you've essentially reduced the likelihood of something similar, right?
Well, we're not out of the woods yet.
We're not. Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, here, I've been celebrating. God, oh dear.
Board is elected.
Yeah.
But there's existential threats to the company, to AfriNIC, of the court cases and things are still there. So we have work to do. I guess I sort of went in with a slogan of "Make AfriNIC Great Again." I should have worn the hat. I had some hats made, and I will
another MAGA hat.
Yeah, I made them up, and I can share some photos. But that's what we have to do, right? We now have to do some work to get things working again. Some of the things it's supposed to be doing have been paused a bit. The policy development processes have stopped while it's been frozen in some ways. So we need to restart some of these things and get it, focus on making it great again. Right? Mm.
So I was celebrating prematurely.
You're celebrating because I think the right team are in place to do that, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
It's Fiona and I from this part of the world, but we are seeing, I think, the other elected directors are seems like sensible, experienced people that have the same objective to make this thing work.
So you guys have not met even over Zoom?
We have met over Zoom.
Oh, okay.
One time, and we're meeting again today.
Yeah. Okay. You've restored my confidence, but I know.
But most of us had a little as we were still candidates, did get together in Nigeria at an internet meeting a few weeks ago and just had a little chat just to get to know each other. So a number of not all of them, but a number of them. Like Fiona and I have already met, or we've known for a long time, some of them, yeah.
Okay, so we've got quite a lot of work cut out for you, but you're ready. Roll up your sleeves.
It's going to have to be, yeah.
Restore confidence.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I read something, I could be wrong, that the other bodies similar to AfriNIC, now the global bodies, are taking steps to ensure that they too don't endure what AfriNIC have endured, right? Has this also been a lesson for the rest of the world?
So there's a document which has been called ICP2 before, but there's a new proposed draft, and they're giving it another name. And I'm trying to think what it is. Internet. Anyway, I'm forgetting because they were calling it ICP2 redraft, and now they're giving it another name. But that document has been created to with consensus between those internet RIRs and the global body that sits above them called ICANN, to create a document which is, changing some of those rules around, particularly around how new IRIRs are created or dissolved. So Regional Internet Registry, yes. This is what AfriNIC is.
IR, okay.
So I said there's these 5 of them. Right?
Yes,
so
you said there's 5, yeah.
There's 5 continents, but Asia and Australia. APNIC is Asia Pacific, so that includes Australia and Australasia and Asia. So there's only, and Antarctica doesn't have one, Mm-hmm. But what if we go to space, right? What if there are human beings on Mars? It will need resources for, so it is setting things for the future as to how those resources are allocated if new regions are placed. Things are shifting. But anyway, as a result of what is not been happening with AfriNIC, I think probably Africa has not taken as much part in this creation of this new document as it should have, right? And maybe not all the representatives that Africa could have had in those discussions have been there. So, we have to have, we're missing out on the party. It's not over yet. It's not too late, but we're missing out on certain things. Yeah. So that's one of the things that AfriNIC we have to get people taking part in those discussions. And we have to now get, there's and AfriNIC have sent this out to all their members. There is, a call for comments from the members and about this new document. It's important people read those emails and say, hey, let me read that. Not everybody will read it, but did you read BBI? Did you read that one? Or have you read the Constitution? No, I haven't read the Constitution. I read BBI, but when these things come out, it is important that people, if they don't read the whole thing, it's a very long document, but try and at least read the bits that are important to them. And we can now use these AI tools to help us digest big things and say, is that what we really want? So we need to, get people to put their comments in so AfriNIC can have a response to that.
What I'm getting again is there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But this AfriNIC story was like a lesson learned, I guess, for the other bodies. Even though you've not been involved in the bigger conversation.
Yeah.
It jolted a response of, oh my word, this might happen to us if we're not careful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess they have us to thank.
To
an extent.
Definitely, and thank you.
Yeah.
We've talked raising awareness. It's just getting, I think we need to see more, more people involved in understanding what this is about, right? Because it doesn't just affect, ISPs and students in universities.
So it affects everybody globally.
Yeah.
Right, my final question. Where do you see AfriNIC 5 years from now? And what would success look like for the new board?
Success will look like, we have next a number of tasks, but some of the important ones is going to be, as I said, it's had no CEO. So
appointing a CEO to the board.
The right person as CEO is going to be, a task that has to be done. But it should be, globally recognized as being, good as a regional internet registry. It shouldn't be viewed as a threat to the internet itself. If the internet system is to, be successful, it has to. Everybody has to be playing their part, right? And if the opposite would happen, and one of these RIRs were to collapse or go wrong, that would put in place potential challenges to the whole internet system, and you would find that it's possible that a government could take over the internet, and now it's run by a government, and it wouldn't be our government running the internet. It would be one in another continent, in the north of the world,
and we don't want that.
Yeah.
Okay. So need to appoint a board CEO
and other things. Get people involved, get the community involved.
Yeah.
In policy development, in understanding what this is about. Telling us, the members as well, telling us, what they want to see. Do they want to see reduced fees? We need to make decisions, and move the organisation forward. Even be more efficient. It hasn't really been very efficient. There's been times where it has not been handing out IP addresses to anyone. Even in this election, there were 300 members who were recent members were not eligible to vote under a court action from the Mauritian courts. We need to, sort these things out. We need to then have, regular elections. It's supposed to be elections every 1 or 2 years, where you would, rather than having it So we need to get people, and then the board of directors need to know when to stand down as well. Right? We need to say, now is my time to go and do some farming. We're not there for life, right? We're there to do a job.
They're there to do a job.
Yeah.
One last very cheeky question. What are your thoughts on digital colonialism? We used that with Fiona last time. And its relationship to AfriNIC.
Well, look, I've done some talking about this before, but the internet, the backbone of the internet, let's say even in Kenya, East Africa, the backbone of the internet, and it is developing, but we have subsea cables coming into Mombasa. We have then fiber optic cables coming to Nairobi. We then have fiber optic cables going into Uganda and then into other parts of East Africa. It's largely, the infrastructure that is modern Kenya was, although we've had new roads and new projects and this and that, but the design of the infrastructure in Kenya is largely the design of the colonial government or the colonial settlers that were here. And the internet has followed the same pathways, right? So the internet follows the same roads, the same railways. The railway was built in 1906. This is how a lot of the countries that are in Africa were designed. And the design, there are some changes going on, ambitious mega projects that are taking place. There's a transcontinental highway in West Africa. There are other transcontinental highways that are being planned. Here in Kenya, we've had Lapset Corridor. We've had new roads being extended into Ethiopia, ports built in Lamu. So this is modern, infrastructural redesign, opening up the north of the country. So then that becomes, back to the infrastructure side, that becomes the key, right? We have left behind the north of the country in Kenya. We have not built the country properly, in reality, right? Now it is areas that have been less agriculturally lucrative, but as we're seeing extension into other parts of the continent that have not had roads, that have not had connectivity. That is what's happening now, and we're seeing fiber optic networks being built in harder and harder places. Now the easy ones have largely been built. That's one piece of it. We have done quite well in Southern and East Africa and this has been a lot of my focus, along with other industry peers as well, connecting countries to each other, right? So when the internet started out in Africa, there were satellite links that would go up to a satellite and they would land somewhere probably in Europe, to connect the internet up. When subsea cables first started coming, they would come and land in Mombasa. But everybody was, connecting, using the subsea cables to connect to an internet exchange point in Europe. Now, with the work of what Fiona and others have been doing, we've been creating internet exchange points in Kenya, in Mombasa, in Nairobi, in Kampala, all over the place, many of them. And not only then connecting to each other and connecting to the networks, there were 200 or 300 networks connecting at KIXP run by Despot. So connecting up the networks to each other, but that's also bringing investment coming from big companies who are the ones who are running a lot of the internet platforms. They're coming and investing. You hear the noises. You drive around Westlands. You look at the logos on top of the buildings. You see the big tech companies who are here, bringing investments, creating jobs, and there's a balance of So we need to make sure that we're providing the right basis for that internet worked. We need to find that we are creating the right skills and the right software. It's happening, right? Those companies are not just coming and, they're building software development houses, developing global company, products here. So Kenya somewhere, heading towards the right place of decolonizing. I would say what I'm saying is it was colonized. It was colonized in the first place, right? My point is that the railway was built in that time, and that then became the basis for the internet. But now we need to connect up. There's more work to be done in West Africa, I think, in terms of regional connectivity in that way. But Southern and East Africa have been with like-minded players gradually, having better connectivity between the countries, between people in the countries. So now, if you send an email to somebody in South Africa now, it's probably not going to Europe, right? But if you send an email to somebody in Nigeria, it's probably passing through a server in UK
So there's an imbalance, and we need to get to a point where certain regions are balanced.
Yeah.
And Eastern Africa and Southern Africa are on the right track.
They're further ahead.
They're further ahead, not on the right track.
Well, we're doing well. Yeah, we're doing well.
Okay, we're doing well. Not just to get... Okay. Well, that's it from me today. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for answering the tough questions. From your years building networks across the continent to your role in shaping governance conversations, like the anti-shutdown policy, and now to your leadership at AfriNIC, it is clear, and from this conversation, that the continent's digital future is in the right hands. For our listeners, AfriNIC's new leadership is already in place as of 12th of September. The real test now is whether they can strengthen governance, uphold transparency, and protect Africa's digital sovereignty, which I'm sure they will. You've had it right here from me, Stella Gishuhi. I'm your host for Tech Talk Africa. See you next time.